The Velkari Empire had ruled the stars for over 2,000 years. They had conquered 17 star systems and brought dozens of alien species under their control. Their technology was the most advanced in the known galaxy, or so they believed. Their sensor arrays could detect a ship's power signature from 3 light-years away. Their plasma weapons could melt through any known armor. Their fleet had never lost a battle. Fleet Commander Zorath stood on the observation deck of his flagship, the Eternal Silence. He was tall, even for a Velkari, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that glowed softly in the dim light. He watched the stars with the quiet confidence of a predator who had never met anything stronger than himself. "Commander," said a voice behind him, "we have completed the conquest of the Kepler sector. All resistance has been eliminated." Zorath did not turn around. "Good. Prepare the colony ships. I want settlements established within the month." The officer bowed and left. Zorath allowed himself a small smile. Another victory, another system added to the empire. The universe was vast, but the Velkari would eventually control all of it. It was simply a matter of time. Then the alarms began. The sound was sharp and loud, cutting through the silence of the observation deck like a knife. Zorath spun around, his 4 eyes narrowing. Alarms on his flagship were rare. Alarms that sounded this urgent were almost unheard of. He moved quickly to the command center, his long robes flowing behind him. Officers rushed past him, their faces showing confusion and fear. Something was very wrong. Senior Technician Miral stood at her console, her 4 hands moving frantically across the controls. She was young for her position, but brilliant. Zorath had promoted her himself after she had detected an enemy ambush that saved 300 ships. If anyone could tell him what was happening, it was her. "Report," Zorath commanded. Miral looked up at him, and Zorath felt a chill run down his spine. In all the years he had known her, he had never seen fear in her eyes. Until now. "Commander, we are detecting something at the edge of the Kepler sector. 3 objects. They appeared from nowhere." "Ships?" "I believe so, Commander. But—" She hesitated. "But what? Our sensors cannot properly analyze them. The energy readings are unlike anything in our database. The signature is so massive that the system keeps flagging it as a malfunction. But I have checked the equipment 3 times. It is not a malfunction." Zorath pushed past her and looked at the screen himself. The readings made no sense. The power output from these 3 objects was greater than his entire fleet combined. That was impossible. Nothing could produce that much energy. "Show me visual," he ordered. The screen changed to show a section of empty space. For a moment, Zorath saw nothing. Then the camera adjusted, and he saw them. 3 ships hung in the void. They were unlike anything he had ever seen. There were no smooth curves, no elegant lines, no artistic beauty. These vessels were angular and brutal, covered in thick plates of what appeared to be armor. They looked heavy, solid, and incredibly dangerous. They looked like they had been built by a species that did not care about beauty. They looked like they had been built by a species that only cared about one thing: war. "What are they?" Zorath whispered. "Unknown, Commander. They do not match any species in our records." On the lead vessel of the unknown fleet, Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair and studied the alien ships on his view screen. He was a man in his mid-40s, with short brown hair that was starting to turn gray at the edges. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp and alert. He had served in the United Earth Defense Fleet for 22 years, and he had seen many strange things. But this was his first contact with an alien civilization, and he intended to do it right. "Lieutenant Nguyen," he said, "what do we know about these aliens?" Katie Nguyen, his communications officer, pulled up the data on her console. She was young, barely 30, with black hair tied back in a neat ponytail. "Based on the probe data we received last month, they call themselves the Velkari, Captain. They appear to be an expansionist empire. They have conquered at least 17 star systems." "Conquered," Jake repeated. "Not allied with, not traded with. Conquered." "Yes, sir." The probe detected evidence of military action in several systems. It appears they take what they want by force. Jake nodded slowly. This was what Earth Command had feared. Humanity's first contact with alien life. And it was with a hostile empire. Still, orders were orders. They were here to make peace, not war. Open a channel, he said. Standard first contact protocols. Katie worked her console for a moment. Channel open, Captain. Jake stood up and straightened his uniform. He was suddenly very aware that the next words he spoke might be the most important words any human had ever said. He took a deep breath. Unknown vessels. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations. We mean you no harm. Please respond. On the eternal silence, Mural's console exploded with warnings. The alien transmission was not just a simple message. It was carried on a signal so powerful and complex that her equipment could barely process it. The encoding was unlike anything she had ever seen. It would take her team months just to understand the basic structure of the communication. They are trying to talk to us, she said, her voice shaking. Commander, they are broadcasting on every known frequency simultaneously. And some frequencies we did not even know existed. Zorath stared at the screen, at those three ugly, brutal ships. They were just sitting there, not moving, not attacking, just waiting. But their very presence screamed danger. Every instinct he had developed over 40 years of military service was telling him to run, to take his fleet and run as far away as possible. But he was Velkari. The Velkari did not run. Can you translate their message? He asked. I am working on it, Commander. The language structure is strange, but I believe I can decode it. Mural worked furiously for several minutes. Finally, she looked up. I have it. They say they come in peace. They wish to establish diplomatic relations. Peace, Zorath said the word like it was foreign to him. In many ways, it was. The Velkari did not ask for peace. They demanded surrender. He looked at those three ships again. Ships that radiated more power than his entire fleet. Ships that his sensors could not even properly analyze. For the first time in his long career, Fleet Commander Zorath wondered if he had finally met something stronger than the Velkari Empire. Zorath demanded answers, and his crew scrambled to provide them. Every scientist on the Eternal Silence was pulled from their regular duties and assigned to study the alien vessels. They worked through the night, running scan after scan, trying to understand what they were dealing with. The results only made things worse. Mural stood before Zorath in his private quarters, holding a data tablet in her trembling hands. She had not slept in over 30 hours, and exhaustion was written all over her face. But there was something else there too. Something that looked very much like terror. Tell me everything, Zorath said. Mural took a deep breath. Commander, their hull composition includes elements we have never encountered before. Our periodic table has 147 known elements. Their ships contain at least 12 elements that do not exist on our table. We do not know where they came from, or how they were created. Zorath felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. Continue. Their reactors are producing power outputs that should be impossible for vessels of that size. Our best estimates suggest that each of those three ships generates more energy than our entire homeworld uses in a year. We do not understand how this is possible. It violates several fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. And their weapons? Mural hesitated. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. Our scanners cannot fully analyze their weapon systems. Every time we attempt a deep scan, the readings become corrupted. It is as if their technology is too complex for our equipment to process. But from what little we can determine, their weapons appear to be some form of electromagnetic acceleration system. They fire solid projectiles at speeds approaching a significant fraction of light speed. Zorath stared at her. That is impossible. I know, Commander. But the readings are clear. If those weapons were fired at our ships, the projectiles would pass through our shields, like they were not even there. Our armor would offer no protection whatsoever. A single shot from one of those vessels could destroy any ship in our fleet. Zorath sat down heavily in his chair. In 2,000 years, the Velkhari had never encountered a species more advanced than themselves. They had always been the conquerors, never the conquered. Now, 3 ships had appeared out of nowhere, and suddenly the mighty Velkhari Empire seemed very small and very vulnerable. What manner of species builds such weapons? He asked, more to himself than to Miral. Across the void of space, aboard the Sentinel, a very different conversation was taking place. Chief Engineer Ben Kowalski sat in the engineering bay, surrounded by holographic displays showing the alien fleet in perfect detail. He was a big man with broad shoulders and hands that were rough from years of working with machinery. He had a cup of coffee in one hand and a confused expression on his face. "Captain," he said into his communicator, "you need to come down here and see this." Jake Morrison arrived 5 minutes later, followed by Lieutenant Commander Ryan Okonkwo, the ship's tactical officer. Ryan was tall and muscular, with dark skin and a shaved head. He had been a soldier before he joined the fleet, and he still carried himself like one. "What have you got?" Jake asked. Ben pointed at the displays. "I have been analyzing the alien ships, Captain. Their propulsion systems are actually pretty good. Not as efficient as ours, but respectable. Their communication technology is decent. Their life support systems are well designed. But," Jake prompted, "but their weapons and defensive systems are centuries behind us." Ben pulled up a detailed schematic of an alien warship. "Their primary weapons are plasma cannons. Basically, they superheat gas and fire it at enemy ships. It is effective against primitive armor, but our shields would absorb the energy without any trouble at all. And their defensive barriers are just basic energy screens. Our railguns would punch through them like paper." Ryan leaned forward, studying the schematic. "How is that possible? If their other technology is advanced, why are their weapons so primitive?" "I think I understand," Jake said slowly. "Look at their ships. Look at the design. They are sleek, elegant, beautiful. They were not built for war. They were built for conquest." Ben nodded. "You are right, Captain. These ships were designed to intimidate primitive species, to look impressive and powerful. Against anyone with real military technology, they would be helpless. So we are dealing with bullies," Ryan said. "They have spent 2,000 years beating up species that cannot fight back. They have never faced a real opponent." Jake walked over to the main display and stared at the alien fleet. There were over 200 ships out there, each one carrying thousands of Velkhari soldiers. They were an empire that had conquered 17 star systems. They were feared across this part of the galaxy, and 3 human ships could destroy them all without breaking a sweat. "This changes things," Jake said quietly. "We came here hoping to meet equals. Instead, we have found a species that is technologically inferior and historically aggressive. That is a dangerous combination." "What do you mean?" Ben asked. "I mean that scared people do stupid things. And right now, the Velkhari are probably very scared. They have been scanning us for hours. They know they cannot match our technology. The question is, how will they react to that knowledge?" Ryan crossed his arms. "They might attack, hoping to overwhelm us with numbers." "They might," Jake agreed. "Or they might run. Or they might try to negotiate. We need to be prepared for any possibility." He turned away from the display and faced his officers. "Here is what we are going to do. We are going to maintain a non-threatening posture. We are not going to make any aggressive moves, but we are also going to keep our shields at full strength and our weapons ready. If they attack us, we will defend ourselves. But I want to make one thing absolutely clear. We are not here to start a war. We are here to make peace. Humanity has had enough of war. We will not fire the first shot." Ben and Ryan nodded. They understood. Every human understood. The wars of the past had nearly destroyed their species. The nuclear exchanges, the orbital bombardments, the biological weapons. Humanity had looked into the abyss and seen its own extinction staring back. That was why they had finally united. That was why they had built ships like the Sentinel, ships capable of surviving the worst that human creativity could devise. These ships had been built to end wars, not start them. One more thing, Jake added. When we talk to these aliens, I want everyone to remember that they are not our enemies. They are just a species that has never faced a challenge before. How they respond to that challenge will determine everything. Let us hope they choose wisely. Back on the Eternal Silence, Zorath made his decision. He would send a message to the High Council. He would request guidance. But deep in his heart, he already knew what the Council would say. The Velkhari did not negotiate with inferior species. They conquered them. The question was, were these humans an inferior species? Or were the Velkhari about to discover that they themselves had been inferior all along? The message from Fleet Commander Zorath reached the Velkhari homeworld in less than an hour. It traveled through a network of communication relays that spanned the Empire, each one boosting the signal until it arrived at the Great Palace in the capital city of Velkhar Prime. There, it was decoded, verified, and delivered directly to Supreme Chancellor Vethra. Vethra was old, even by Velkhari standards. He had ruled the Empire for over 300 years, guiding it through countless wars and conquests. His blue skin had faded to a pale gray, and 2 of his 4 eyes no longer worked properly. But his mind was still sharp, and he understood immediately that Zorath's report was the most important message he had ever received. He called an emergency session of the High Council. The council chamber was a vast, circular room at the heart of the Great Palace. 12 seats surrounded a central holographic display, each one occupied by one of the most powerful figures in the Empire. Military commanders, scientific advisors, economic ministers. They had all received copies of Zorath's report, and they had all come with questions. Vethra stood at the head of the chamber and activated the holographic display. Images of the 3 human ships appeared, rotating slowly in the center of the room. As you have all read, Vethra began, our forces have made contact with an unknown species in the Kepler sector. They call themselves humans. They claim to come from a small planet in a distant star system. And according to Fleet Commander Zorath, their technology is significantly more advanced than our own. Admiral Korvax, the Empire's chief military strategist, leaned forward in his seat. He was a veteran of dozens of campaigns. A warrior who had personally led the conquest of 3 star systems. He was not easily impressed. Significantly more advanced, he repeated. What exactly does that mean? Vethra pulled up the technical data that Miral had compiled. Their ships generate more power than our entire homeworld. Their weapons fire projectiles at speeds we cannot match. Their defensive barriers can absorb our strongest plasma cannons without any effect. In short, Admiral, it means that our entire fleet could not destroy even one of their vessels. Silence fell over the council chamber. The implications were clear to everyone present. For 2,000 years, the Velkhari had been the dominant power in their region of space. They had conquered every species they encountered. They had never even considered the possibility that someone might conquer them. This is impossible, said Minister Krath, the head of scientific research. No species could develop technology that far beyond our own. They must be using some kind of trick, an illusion designed to frighten us. Our sensors do not lie, Vethra replied calmly. These readings have been verified by 3 separate teams. The human ships are exactly what they appear to be. Weapons of war beyond anything we have ever imagined. Korvax stood up, his 4 hands clenched into fists. Then we must strike first. Before they have a chance to attack us, send the entire fleet to the Kepler sector. Overwhelm them with numbers. Even the most advanced ship cannot survive being attacked from all directions at once. Can it not? Vethra asked quietly. Look at the data again, Admiral. Their point defense systems can track and destroy incoming projectiles moving at almost the speed of light. Their shields can absorb energy equivalent to a small star. Do you really believe that numbers alone will save us? What would you have us do? Korvax demanded. Surrender? Bow down to these humans and beg for mercy? The Velkari do not beg. We do not surrender. We conquer. Perhaps, Vethra said. It is time we learned something new. Far away, on the Sentinel, Captain Jake Morrison was having a similar discussion with his superiors. Admiral Lisa Brennan's face filled the main view screen. Transmitted from Earth Command headquarters on Luna, she was a woman in her 60s, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. The situation is complicated, she said. The Velkari are clearly hostile. They have conquered multiple species through military force. Under normal circumstances, we would consider them a threat to be neutralized. But these are not normal circumstances, Jake replied. No, they are not. This is humanity's first contact with alien life. Everything we do here will set a precedent for all future interactions. If we respond to the Velkari with violence, we will be telling the galaxy that humans solve their problems through war. Is that the message we want to send? Jake thought about the question carefully. Humanity had nearly destroyed itself through war. The 22nd century had seen nuclear exchanges that killed billions. The great wars that followed had pushed the species to the edge of extinction. It was only through the Unity Accords that humanity had finally come together, agreeing to end their conflicts and work toward a common future. The ships of the United Earth Defense Fleet were built from the lessons of those dark times. They were the most powerful weapons ever created by human hands, designed to ensure that no enemy could ever threaten Earth again. But they were not meant to be instruments of conquest. They were meant to be a shield, not a sword. No, Jake said finally. That is not who we are anymore. Admiral Brennan nodded. I agree. Our orders are to continue diplomatic efforts. We want peace, Jake. We want to build something better than what we had before, a federation of species working together, protecting each other, learning from each other. And if the Velkari refuse, if they attack us, then you defend yourself. But only with proportional force. Do not destroy them if you can disable them. Do not kill if you can avoid it. Show them that strength does not have to mean cruelty. Jake understood. It was a difficult balance to maintain. The Velkari were aggressive, dangerous, and clearly afraid. Afraid people made bad decisions. They might attack out of desperation, hoping that somehow they could overcome the odds. If that happened, Jake would have to respond. He would have to hurt them, maybe badly. But he would not destroy them. He would give them a chance to learn, to change, to become something better than they were. It was the same chance humanity had given itself. After all, understood, Admiral, he said. We will do everything we can to avoid a conflict. I know you will. Brennan paused, and for a moment her professional mask slipped, revealing something warmer beneath. Jake, I have known you for 20 years. You are a good man. You will handle this well. I have faith in you. Thank you, Lisa. The transmission ended, and Jake sat alone in his ready room, thinking about everything that was at stake. The fate of two species hung in the balance. The future of interstellar relations. The chance to build something new and wonderful in the vast emptiness of space. All of it depended on what happened next. He hoped the Velkari would choose wisely, but if they did not, he was ready to teach them a lesson they would never forget. The High Council debated for 3 days. Some argued for peace, others demanded war. In the end, Admiral Korvax won the argument with a simple question. How could the Velkari call themselves an empire if they were afraid of 3 ships? Supreme Chancellor Vethra reluctantly agreed to a compromise. They would test the humans. Not a full attack, just a small engagement. 12 destroyers would be sent to the Kepler sector. They would fire on the human vessels and see what happened. If the humans truly were as powerful as the reports suggested, the destroyers would be sacrificed. But at least the Empire would know what they were dealing with. It was a cold decision. 12 ships, thousands of soldiers, sent to die just to gather information. Fleet Commander Zorath received the orders with a heavy heart. He selected 12 destroyers from his fleet, choosing ships with experienced crews and strong commanders. He told them it was a standard patrol mission. He did not tell them they were probably going to die. The destroyers departed at dawn, their plasma cannons fully charged and their crews confident. They were Velkari warriors. They had never lost a battle. They could not imagine that this would be any different. Captain Jake Morrison detected them 3 hours before they arrived. The Sentinel's sensors were far more advanced than anything the Velkari possessed. He could track their ships from halfway across the star system. He knew their speed, their heading, their power levels. He knew they were coming to fight. 12 contacts, bearing 270. Ryan Okonkwo reported from the tactical station. They are approaching in a standard attack formation. Weapons are charging. Jake stood up from his command chair and walked to the front of the bridge. He stared at the view screen, watching the 12 small dots growing larger as they approached. Part of him had hoped it would not come to this. Part of him had wanted the Velkari to be smarter, to see the obvious truth and choose peace. But another part of him, the part that had grown up hearing stories of the old wars, understood completely. The Velkari were afraid, and afraid people fought back, even when fighting was hopeless. It was just what frightened creatures did. Open a channel, he ordered. All frequencies. Katie Nguyen worked her console. Channel, open, Captain. Jake spoke slowly and clearly, knowing that every word would be translated and recorded. Velkari vessels. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Earth Defense Fleet. We do not wish to fight you. Please power down your weapons and withdraw. I repeat, we do not want a conflict. There is no need for violence. There was no response. The 12 destroyers continued their approach, their weapons glowing brighter as they charged to full power. They are ignoring us, Captain, Katie said quietly. I know. Jake took a deep breath. All hands, battle stations. Raise shields. Power up the point defense grid. Load the railguns. Alarms sounded throughout the ship as the crew rushed to their positions. The Sentinel's shields flickered to life, creating an invisible barrier of energy around the vessel. Deep in the hull, massive electromagnetic coils began to charge, preparing to launch tungsten projectiles at incredible speeds. Shields at full power, Ben Kowalski reported from engineering. All systems ready. Weapons online, Ryan added. Targets locked. Jake watched the destroyers close the distance. 500 kilometers, 400, 300. At 200 kilometers, the lead destroyer opened fire. Brilliant streams of superheated plasma shot across the void, beautiful and deadly. They struck the Sentinel's shields in a cascade of color, blue and green and orange all mixing together in a spectacular display. The bridge lights flickered slightly from the energy absorption. Status report, Jake said calmly. Shields holding at 99.7%, Ben replied. Their weapons are barely registering. At this rate, they could fire at us for a year and not bring our shields down. All 12 destroyers were firing now, pouring everything they had into the human vessel. The Sentinel sat motionless, absorbing the barrage without any visible effect. It was like watching a child throwing pebbles at a mountain. Captain, Ryan said, his voice tight with restrained anger. Permission to return fire. Jake nodded slowly. Granted, but listen carefully. Target their weapon systems only. I want those ships disabled, not destroyed. No casualties if we can avoid it. Understood? Understood, sir. Ryan's fingers danced across his console. The Sentinel's railguns spoke once, a sound like thunder that echoed through the hull. 12 shots, fired in less than a second. Each projectile was a small cylinder of tungsten, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. They moved so fast that the Velkari sensors never even registered them. 12 destroyers suddenly found themselves without weapons. The shots had been perfect. Each projectile had struck exactly where Ryan aimed it, punching through shields and armor like they were not even there. The plasma cannons on every destroyer were simply gone, vaporized by the impact, but the ships themselves were intact. Their engines still worked. Their life support still functioned. Not a single crew member had been injured. It had taken less than 2 seconds. Aboard the Eternal Silence, watching from a safe distance, Commander Zorath stood frozen in disbelief. He had seen many battles in his 40 years of service. He had seen victories and defeats, triumphs and tragedies. But he had never seen anything like this. "They disabled our entire attack squadron in less than 2 seconds, Muriel whispered beside him. And they were not even trying. Zorath could not speak. His mind was struggling to process what he had just witnessed. The human ship had barely moved. Its shields had absorbed their best weapons without effort, and then it had responded with such precise, controlled violence that it had neutralized 12 warships without killing a single soldier. They could have destroyed those ships. They could have killed every Valkyrie aboard, but they chose not to. Why? "Commander," Muriel said, her voice shaking. "The human vessel is transmitting again. Put it through." Jake Morrison's voice filled the command center, calm and steady despite everything that had just happened. "Valkyrie fleet, this is Captain Morrison. Your ships have been disabled, not destroyed. We have demonstrated that we could defeat you easily, but we chose mercy instead. Please understand. We do not want war. We want peace. But we will defend ourselves if necessary. Wantonly, the choice is yours." The transmission ended. Zorath stood in the silence that followed, understanding finally dawning in his mind. These humans were not just stronger than the Valkyrie, they were better. They had the power to destroy, but they chose to spare. They had every reason to be angry, but they offered peace instead. For the first time in his life, Zorath felt something like respect for an enemy, and something like shame for his own people. The news of the battle spread through the Valkyrie Empire like wildfire. 12 destroyers, crewed by experienced warriors, had been defeated in less than 2 seconds. Not destroyed, but defeated. Their weapons torn away with surgical precision, while their crews remained unharmed. It was the most humiliating defeat in the Empire's 2,000-year history. And yet, strangely, it was also the most merciful. Supreme Chancellor Vethra watched the battle recordings over and over again, trying to understand. The humans could have killed everyone. They could have destroyed every ship, including the Eternal Silence and all the vessels watching from a distance. Instead, they had shown restraint. They had demonstrated their power and then immediately asked for peace. It made no sense to him. Power existed to be used. Strength existed to conquer. That was the way of the universe, the fundamental law that had guided the Valkyrie for millennia. Why would anyone choose mercy when victory was assured? After 3 days of meditation, Vethra made his decision. He would meet with these humans face to face. He would try to understand them, and perhaps, if they were sincere about their desire for peace, he would learn something new. The meeting was arranged through careful diplomatic channels. A neutral station was selected, an old trading post that belonged to neither species. Captain Jake Morrison agreed to attend, with only 2 officers. Supreme Chancellor Vethra would bring a similar number. Jake arrived first, wearing his dress uniform and carrying no weapons. Lieutenant Katie Nguyen and Lieutenant Commander Ryan Okonkwo flanked him, both looking slightly uncomfortable in their formal attire. They stood in the meeting chamber and waited, watching as the Valkyrie delegation entered from the opposite door. Vethra was taller than Jake had expected. Even bent with age, he towered over the humans, his gray skin and clouded eyes making him look ancient and wise. 2 younger Valkyrie walked beside him, clearly guards despite their diplomatic robes. The 2 leaders faced each other across the empty chamber. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Vethra moved forward, his steps slow but steady. "Captain Morrison," he said, his voice deep and resonant. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." "Thank you for requesting it," Jake replied. "I was hoping we could resolve our differences peacefully." Vethra studied the human carefully. Jake Morrison was small by Valkyrie standards, with soft skin that looked like it would tear easily. His body was fragile, his limbs thin. He did not look like a conqueror. He did not look like someone who commanded the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. "Your ships," Vethra began. "Your weapons. I have thought about nothing else for 3 days." How did your species develop such terrible instruments of war? Jake was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with old pain. We developed them by fighting each other, Supreme Chancellor. For thousands of years, humans fought among ourselves. We created better and better weapons, each one more destructive than the last. We were not trying to conquer other species. We were trying to survive each other. Katie stepped forward, her voice soft. We almost destroyed ourselves. Several times. The last great war killed almost half of our population. We looked at the ruins of our cities and the graves of our children, and we finally understood that we had to change. Vethra's 4 eyes widened. You used these weapons against your own kind? Yes, Jake said simply. That is the truth of humanity, Supreme Chancellor. We are capable of terrible violence. We have looked into the darkest parts of ourselves and seen what we are truly capable of, and we decided that we never wanted to be that again. So you built even more powerful weapons, Vethra said, confused. I do not understand. If you wanted peace, why build ships of war? Ryan answered this time, his voice deep and serious. Because we learned that peace must be protected. There will always be those who want to take what is not theirs, to conquer and enslave and destroy. If we want peace, we must be strong enough to defend it. Our ships are not built to conquer. They are built to ensure that no one can ever conquer us again. Vethra was silent for a long time, processing everything he had heard. These humans had done to themselves what the Valkyrie had done to other species. They had waged war, caused suffering, destroyed lives, but instead of continuing down that path, they had stopped. They had changed. Could the Valkyrie do the same? The Valkyrie Empire has a choice, Jake said, as if reading his thoughts. You can continue your expansion, conquering weaker species and taking their resources. Eventually, you will encounter someone like us, or perhaps someone less merciful. That is how empires end, Supreme Chancellor. They grow until they meet something they cannot defeat, and then they fall. Or, Vethra asked, or you can join us. The United Earth Coalition is building something new. A federation of species working together, trading together, learning from each other, protecting each other. We believe that all intelligent life has value. We believe that cooperation is better than conquest. And if we refuse, if we continue as we always have, Jake shrugged, then we leave. We will not force you to join us. That would make us no better than you were. But we also will not stand by while innocent worlds are conquered. If you attack peaceful species, we will defend them. If you try to expand into our territory, we will stop you. Vethra understood the unspoken message. The humans were offering a choice, but it was not really a choice at all. The Valkyrie could join the Federation and change their ways, or they could continue as conquerors and eventually be destroyed. The humans might not fire the first shot, but they would certainly fire the last. It should have felt like a threat. Instead, it felt like an opportunity. I have ruled the Valkyrie Empire for 300 years, Vethra said slowly. I have conquered worlds and defeated enemies without number. I thought I understood power. I thought I understood strength. He paused, looking at the small human standing before him. This creature, so fragile and soft, who commanded weapons that could destroy civilizations. This being who had every reason to hate the Valkyrie, and yet offered peace instead. I believe, Vethra said finally, that I have much to learn. Jake Morrison smiled and extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. Then let us start learning together. Vethra looked at the offered hand for a moment. Then, slowly, carefully, he reached out one of his own hands and took it. It was the beginning of a new era. Not just for humans or Valkyrie, but for all the species of the galaxy. An era built not on conquest and fear, but on cooperation and hope. The humans had come to the stars carrying the lessons of their bloody past. They had built weapons of unimaginable power, and then chosen to use that power for peace. They had shown the galaxy that strength and mercy could exist together, and in doing so, they had changed everything.